Major League Baseball teams are notoriously terrible at counting their home attendance figures. Look, this is an issue that happens across sports though. Arena and stadium attendance numbers, they're all a bit wonky. That's because a lot of it is simply guesswork. Now, sometimes this is an educated guess. And when a team is selling out or coming close to selling out, being off by tens or even hundreds of fans, it's not really that big of a deal or all that noticeable. However, when teams struggle to bring in fans, well, everyone needs to be in lockstep as not to draw attention to what could be massive discrepancies. If you have one team reporting a small crowd to be 3,000 people and another team with a similar size crowd reporting that to be 10,000, well, you're going to raise a few eyebrows. Naturally, MLB owners did not get that memo because some of the figures they are announcing for their crowds are downright shady. I can only assume this is why the Oakland A's, Miami Marlins, and Chicago White Sox all have wildly different interpretations of what very few fans in their stadium look like. Seriously, are you telling me this crowd is double the size of this crowd, and this crowd is somewhere in the middle of those two figures?
They're the same picture.
For real though, it's the same picture. Someone has just made up a different attendance figure for each one.
As I like to call it, Great Bratton. Keep it running.
When I was attending the University of Idaho, go Vandals, I worked as a student employee in the sports information department. Great experience, loved my time there. And it was during this time I learned the, I suppose I could say, artistry of coming up with an attendance figure for a sports game. The calculation is a guess. It's an educated guess, no doubt, but a guess nonetheless. In the case of my beloved Idaho Vandals, that meant we inflated the numbers sometimes to make things sound better. That's just how the process went. Here's how everything goes down. So the ticket office will tell you how many tickets they have sold to the game, as well as how many walk-ups they are estimating, how many they expect to receive. You then take that number at some point during the game, you look around at the crowd, you see what exactly meshes with the number you get from the ticket office, find a realistic figure, juice up the numbers a bit to make it sound better, and then you release the attendance figure. Oh, I forgot the most important part of this process. You make sure to add a random number in the tens and one column to not make anything seem suspicious. Like if you announce an attendance as 3,100 people, everyone will be questioning it. They'll be like, how did that happen? That's not real. But if you announce the same attendance as 3,112 people, well, no one questions the number. It's wild, but it's true. Having since covered sports, as well as knowing those working inside team offices and journalists aware of the process, I have come to understand some form of what I just described is used to calculate most attendances across the sports world. Certainly there are franchises out there who really do their best to get the numbers as they come in and make sure what they're announcing as attendance is at least as close to realistic as they can possibly get at that moment in time. Colleges are the Wild West in terms of announced attendance. In that regard, Major League Baseball teams operate far closer to college teams than some of their counterparts in the professional sports realm. When it comes to calculating attendance for any game, I think the biggest challenge you run into is that there are a lot of different data points you need to bring together. You have all of these numbers coming from various sources and getting everything organized at some point during the game itself. It's just unrealistic. Too many people have too many things on their plate to also add up how many people are in the stadium. By the way, doing this was unrealistic when you had ticket takers with their clicker thing trying to count the number of people. It's unrealistic with the technology available even to this day. The process, it doesn't work in real time as a game is being played. To that end, during the early 2000s, you saw a lot of media outlets simply stop reporting on attendance numbers because they knew these numbers were just bogus. They were basically made up. The attendance numbers announced by teams were basically as meaningful as points on any given episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
That's right, the points are like most of the movies that began as Saturday Night Live sketches.
In order to understand just why announced attendance in Major League Baseball doesn't really matter, let's look at the different types of sports attendance and how they impact the eventual number that does get released. You have paid attendance, or the number of people who have actually paid for a ticket to see any given sporting event. Then you have ticketed attendance, which includes comp tickets, discounts, giveaways, all of that stuff. Basically the number of any person you think has a ticket in hand or a ticket that's been given away. We do know that this number doesn't stop being counted just because a game begins. In fact, sales can extend beyond the completion of a game. We know that full and well because the Miami Marlins went on to purchase a ton of tickets for Roy Halladay's perfect game in Miami all those years back, and they did so well after the game had been finished because they wanted to sell them on as souvenirs. Most people associate announced attendance with butts in the seats. How many people are at the game? In reality though, butts in the seats is a number that's almost never used. Even then, there are two drawbacks to the butts in the seats number. First, teams will just include anyone in the venue as part of the actual attendance number. Second, anyone who's ever used digital ticket scanners, e-tickets, whatever you want to call that system, well, you know full and well just how faulty it is. I've been waved into multiple games because the scanner just wasn't working properly. So using this to rely on a butts in the seats number, well, I mean, do so at your own risk. That brings us to announced attendance, or the number most of us will be familiar with. It is a hybrid of all of those other types of attendance I just mentioned, but it's also sort of its own thing completely. Interestingly, the National League announced turnstile numbers for their attendance through 1992. These days, though, baseball teams have been given free license to say, produce, put out any attendance number they so choose. That's a bit different from the NBA and NHL, which claims to use distributed ticket numbers, and the NFL, who wants teams to announce tickets sold, but there's no policy in place for them to do so. Regardless, it does not take a Sherlock Holmes or even an Inspector Gadget to take one look at a poorly attended sporting contest, and in particular baseball games, look at the attendance, see how many people's there, and realize something doesn't necessarily add up, literally. For baseball, the Oakland A's, Chicago White Sox, and Miami Marlins have been drawing roughly the same number of people to most home games in 2024. The announced attendance numbers for each of these teams, though, tells a different story. It's really supporting a narrative each franchise wants you to believe. The Athletics have seemingly been trying to champion their Oakland doesn't care about us cause for years now, despite doing a bunch of terrible things to make sure fans did not want to go to games. That has meant the Oakland A's are just about the only losing team in America to release what are probably realistic turnstile numbers, not including staff, players, and the like, for their announced attendance total. They want that number to be as low as possible. Then you have the Marlins, who are trying to make it seem like more people are at Lone Depot Park than there really are, and they've been doing this for more than a decade now. This year, that team's situation is so bad, the attendance numbers are so terrible that even the fake numbers are sagging and declining. Let's talk about Jerry Reinsdorf and his Chicago White Sox. They have looked to pivot from past years. Then their attendance figures look to be grossly inflated, if we're being honest here. Now, though, it seems like they want to bring those down because, as we all know, Jerry Reinsdorf is either looking to get a new stadium built or to flat out relocate the team. In order to do so, gotta get those numbers down. Much like John Fisher, the White Sox owner's goal in 2024 is so clear. He wants to make it seem like no one cares about the baseball team, and low attendance figures are just one part of that story. Of course, the White Sox and Jerry Reinsdorf can't go all in on cratering those attendance numbers just yet. I imagine they have sponsors for Guaranteed Rate Field and all of that other stuff, and popping out a 3,000 number, well, that will definitely scare them away. But you don't need 20/20 vision to see that Guaranteed Rate Field and the Oakland Coliseum are drawing basically the same number of fans most nights. Everyone wants to focus on MLB. They have an attendance problem. And I mean, that's true to a certain extent. But what about the MLB announced attendance problem? This is just a big deal as the actual attendance problem. Teams are now just announcing attendance figures based on the story they want to sell the general public, what they want folks to believe, rather that be good or bad. What I don't understand, I didn't understand it back at Idaho, and I don't understand it today, is why must attendance figures be announced during the game? We know the accuracy of doing so is questionable at best. Let's just take the time to add everything up, compile all the different categories, comp tickets, pay tickets, butts in the seats, all the other numbers, and then once a month, just release them to the public. Not only does this eliminate the guesswork and just some of the dubious tactics of certain franchises, but it gives everyone just a better understanding of what attendance is. Whether that be in person, like I said, butts in the seats, or just tickets sold, we will have the large holistic picture of attendance that anyone can use to make an informed decision. Of course, sports teams, they probably don't want to do this. Heaven forbid we as fans know the truth about attendance. Instead, we continue to let sports teams, and in particular Major League Baseball franchises, cook the books as far as how many people are at each game. Why though? For what? Because we must have an announced attendance during the game we are at. If you're looking to pop the crowd, just run another hidden ball hat game or show another dot race. Why do we need to have the announced attendance during the game? Seriously, just get out of here with that. Either do the attendance truthfully, take your time to get it right, or do not do it at all. And the announced attendance for this video is 8,732,119. Like I said, make sure the tens and the ones column have a random digit in it. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about stadiums that were outdated before they were even completed, video lower right-hand corner of your screen is the place to go. And the upper right-hand corner of the screen, why I love old, outdated stadiums like the Oakland Coliseum. Until next time, I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.